Happy Halloween, Bumblebee folks! I'm Alexa, resident emo girl, and gosh, today is one of my favorite days of the entire year. As you can see, I even dressed up for the occasion. Any guesses as to what I am? Let me know in the comments what you think. Granted, I feel like the doohickey in my hands might be a dead giveaway for most. I am so thrilled for today's video, so let's dive right into the top 10 evil real witches from history banned from textbooks. Number 10, Gyde Spandemager. So kicking off our list today, we have one of the first women executed for sorcery back in Denmark and Scandinavia. In 1543, King Christian III of Denmark equipped a fleet of 40 ships to chase away an Imperial Dutch fleet from the coast of Norway to the Netherlands. Outside of Helsing, his fleet was stuck in a calm, and the whole project failed. Soon, a merchant's wife named Gyde was arrested and tormented, believed to have gathered a group of witches in a valley outside the city and enchanted the ships. She eventually admitted to conducting a spell with a coven on a hill above Elsinore, and named several more people that were involved, male and female, including vicars, which led to the expansion of the witch trial. Her trial was handled by the royal governor, Eske Bild, and she also said that the enchantments would never disappear unless she was allowed to remove them personally. The people that she named were arrested and tormented to an extent quoted as so hard their limbs were separated, but none other than Gyde confessed. In November of 1543, the king demanded for the rightful old principal of the witches to be burned, but she sadly suffered through further interrogations first before meeting the end of her time. I guess, yeah, you can't say that in school. Number 9, Agnes Sampson. Starting off this tale when King James decided to marry Anne, Princess of Denmark, as quickly as he could, so he arranged a little quickie wedding in Denmark with a proxy standing in for him since he was located in, Scotland. Anne's attempts to join her new husband across the ocean, though, were severely delayed by dangerous and life-threatening storms, so he eventually decided, okay, fine, I'll go over to you. After another wedding ceremony, which the king, actually attended, the couple decided to head home to Scotland, with yet another storm plaguing their journey. So witchcraft trials had already begun in Denmark, remember I just talked about that, and the king had taken note. So when it was reported to him that witches in East Lothian conspired to cause the treacherous weather that threatened not just his life, but that of his way too young bride, he believed what he was told. So Agnes was a local healer and a midwife, a widow who had devoted her life to caring for her neighbors. Suspicion had been clouding her name for ages, so when the king asked for culprits, they were like, I know one. The methods of her interrogation were inhumane. Her body was subjected to agonizing torment. She was coerced into confessing to practicing witchcraft, a confession that included meetings with the devil and dark charms involving the king's possessions. Now, the trial of Agnes was not a fair and impartial affair. The jury, comprised of 17 men, including, individuals who knew Agnes personally, kind of made the conviction almost inevitable. She was found guilty of 49 out of 51 charges, and her fate was sealed. In January, she met a gruesome end in Edinburgh Castle with a rope around her neck and her body set ablaze. Because see, you gotta make sure. Can't have the witches wandering around. Number 8, Angele De La Barthe. Born around 1230 in Toulouse, France, she was a noblewoman and a Gnostic Christian, which was a sect that was considered heretical by the Catholic Church. By definition, Gnostic Christian is a term that refers to various branches of early Christianity that claim to have special divine knowledge. They have different views of the Bible, Jesus Christ, salvation, and God compared to traditional Catholics, which scare me. They have diverse teachings and practices such as Valentinianism, Sethianism, Manichaeism, and Mandaeism. Some of them regard Jesus as a human being who became enlightened or Christed, while others see him as a divine being who came back to lead humanity back to the light. Now, in 1275, Angele was accused of having sexual relations with Satan and was impregnated by him, giving birth to a spawn that had the head of a wolf and a serpent's tail. This being consumed human flesh, and Angele stole the young of other humans to feed it. When she was arrested, she was obviously punished physically, and eventually confessed that the accusations were true. She was sentenced to death and buried alive, making her the first in Europe to have her life ended from accusations of witchcraft. And hey, fun fact, at the time, it wasn't illegal to have sexual relations with demons. Okay, if anybody out there has access to a time machine, don't get any ideas. No, I'm looking at you. Number 7, Walpurga Hausmannin. Her life, at first glance was unremarkable. Born in Bavaria between 1510 and 1527, she spent her days as a midwife, aiding her community. However, her story took a dark turn in 1587 when she became one of the subjects of a ruthless witch trial in Germany. Now, the charges against her were nothing short of horrifying. Witchcraft, sorcery, and even vampirism. Under punishment, she confessed to a bizarre tale involving a demon named Federlin, who appeared to her in the guise of a male co-worker. This demon, she claimed, led her to pledge allegiance to the devil, promising to free free her from poverty. As she recounted in her confession, she had indulged in macabre rituals with Federlin and the devil himself, consuming the roasted flesh of young humans and drinking their redness. She described frequent visits to the devil and her demon lover, often engaging in sexual encounters. You go, girl. Remarkably, she had the power to make him, leave by simply invoking the name of Jesus. Now, Walpurga's confession also included acts of harm using a magical ointment that she had received from her demon lover. The ointment was used to end the lives of many, including the young and animals. Her list of alleged victims was extensive, including 41 young humans, 2 laboring mothers, and a variety of animals. So the swift and unanimous decision of the authorities led to her conviction and a gruesome sentence. Before her execution by burning, she endured multiple branding ceremonies, and her right hand, the very hand she had used as a midwife, was taken off. Finally, she met her end at the stake, and her ashes were discarded into a stream. Once again, you can't just kill a witch one way. Number 6, Isobel Gowdie. So we're diving headfirst into 1662 Scotland now, a time and place where superstition and fear of witchcraft were kind of, the trend. Isobel was a housewife living in the Aldern region, remaining, a mysterious figure in history. While we know very little about her personal life, we do know that her involvement in one of the most notorious witch trials in Scotland's history would forever mark her name. It's weird that she's not in a textbook. What's striking about her case, though, is the lack of information about her initial accusation or the reasons behind her confession. However, it's believed that her ordeal was part of maybe a conspiracy to torment the local minister, Harry Forbes, a fervent believer in witchcraft. Remarkably, for a woman of her time and background, Isobel's confessions were eloquent and detailed. She described chilling encounters with the devil. He's a generous man. She spoke of renouncing her baptism in the church at night, marking her allegiance with the devil, and claimed to have had sexual encounters with him, describing him as a cold, rough, but imposing figure with cloven feet. Her narrative included disturbing accounts of grave robbing, crop spoiling, magical horse rides, and feasts with the Queen of the Fairies. When's my turn? Isobel didn't stop there, though. She confessed to crafting clay effigies to harm others, transforming into animals, and participation in an array of witchcraft rituals. Her testimonies included a staggering number of chants, more than any other witchcraft case. It is believed that she was punished before her confession. Methods used at the time included the use of thumb screws, foot roasting, witch pricking to test for a devil's mark, sleep deprivation, or isolation with, food and water restrictions. With Isobel's extensive confessions, the authorities believed they had enough evidence to request a trial, which, was likely to end in her conviction. The exact outcome of her trial remains unrecorded, but it's safe to assume that she faced a grim fate, likely burning, to prevent her from haunting the community beyond the grave, and then, burn the ashes. Number 5, La Voisin. So she was a French fortune teller, commissioned poisoner, and professional provider of alleged sorcery. She was the head of a network in Paris of witches that provided poison, aphrodisiacs, magical services, and the arranging of black masses, with clients among the aristocracy, and became the central figure in the famous Affaire des Poisons. Her organization of commissioned black magic and poison killings was suspected to have killed around 1,000 people, but it is believed that upwards of 2,500 people might have met their end because of her. That's a lot. Number 4, Alice Kyteler. So Dame Alice Kyteler was the first recorded person condemned for witchcraft in Ireland. She fled the country to either England or Flanders, and there's no record of her escape from persecution. She was originally the only descendant of a Flemish family of merchants settling in Ireland in the mid to late 13th century. She was married 4 times, by the way: William Outlaw, Adam de Blund, Richard de Val, and Sir John de la Poer. Her servant, Petronilla de Meath, was flogged and burned to death at the stake on November 3rd of 1324 after being punished heinously and confessing to the heretical crimes she, Alice, and Alice's followers were alleged to have committed. Oh, she ran a cult. Okay, overachiever. Number 3, Circe. So she is an enchantress and minor goddess in ancient Greek mythology and religion. Now, in most accounts, she is described as the daughter of the sun god Helios and the nymph Perse. She was renowned for her vast knowledge of potions and herbs. Through the use of these and a magic wand or staff, she would transform her enemies or those who offended her into animals. The best known of her legends is told in Homer's Odyssey, when Odysseus visits her island on the way back from the Trojan War, and she changes most of his crew into swine. He manages to persuade her to return them to human shape, lives with her for a year, and has sons with her. Her ability to change others into animals is further highlighted by the story of Picus, an Italian king whom she turns into a woodpecker for resisting her advances. You go, girl. Another story tells of her falling in love with the sea god Glaucus, who prefers the nymph to her. In revenge, she poisons the water where her rival bathed and turns her into a dreadful monster. Now, depictions, even in classical times, diverged from the details in Homer's narrative, which was later to be reinterpreted morally as a cautionary story against, you know what I mean. Early philosophical questions were also raised about whether the change from being a human, with being endowed with reason, to being an unreasoning beast might be preferable after all, and the resulting debate was to have a powerful impact during the Renaissance. Circe was also taken as the archetype of the predatory female. In the eyes of those from a later age, this behavior made her notorious as both a magician and a type of sexually free woman. So, they don't really talk about her in school. Number 2, Moll Dyer. So, fun fact, she was one of the witches that inspired the Blair Witch Project. Residing in Leonardtown, Maryland, her origins are clouded in mystery, the most popular theory being that she was a noblewoman escaping an unsavory past. Taking up an isolated residence outside of town limits, she developed a reputation as a skilled herbalist. Those skills, combined with her unknown past and secluded lifestyle, kinda planted the suspicion of witchcraft in villagers' heads. In the winter of 1697, the weather was so harsh that many crops failed, and a deadly plague swept through the town. It's believed that these were revenge from Moll, after the townspeople had been blaming her for every misfortune and hardship they faced. A meeting was held amongst town vigilantes, and they decided to form a mob to run her out of town. They set fire to her cottage in the dark of night, and Moll ran until her legs gave out, kneeling by a large rock. She raised her hand to the sky, calling down a further curse to the townspeople, and eventually froze to that same rock, leaving her handprint as notice of her final act. The boulder has since been preserved as a landmark, and even though the handprint is no longer clearly visible, visitors have reported feeling profoundly uncomfortable or experiencing terrible aches and pains around it, and cameras have been known to malfunction in its presence. On the coldest nights of the year, people have reported seeing a woman with long white hair, wearing a white dress, walking through the fields and woods near the town. Oh, I love a good ghosty white lady. Number 1, Gilles Garnier. Yep, a male witch. They really didn't like to talk about that in textbooks, but they did exist. So, continuing on, he was a reclusive loner living in the woods around Dole, France. Despite being a solitary man, he did marry in 1572. Historians have reported that he was ill-equipped to provide for his family because he wasn't a very good hunter, being used to having only to provide for himself. And that's when he started hunting something else. Anybody want to guess? Human flesh. The first hunt happened around September 29th of 1572 when Garnier killed a young female, allegedly in the form of a wolf, and brought some of the flesh home for his wife to eat. How thoughtful. Throughout the autumn, more young humans were found unalived and mutilated, including another young woman that Garnier bit and clawed at, but was interrupted by passerbys before fleeing. Sadly, the girl succumbed to her injuries a few days later. Now, in November, Garnier ended the life of a young man this time, enjoying the flesh from his thighs and belly before tearing off a leg to save for later. I could name more, but I'm a little queasy. This caused a stir amongst the townspeople, who believed that it was a werewolf who was committing the horrors. Many folks had witnessed a humanoid-looking wolf near the scenes of the crimes, with the animal darting off once it was aware of being seen. Then in January of 1573, there was one last death. This time, villagers heard a very young person screaming and the sounds of a wolf, witnessing the wolf attempt to flee the scene, but changing into the form of Garnier as it did. He was then arrested, put on the rack, and confessed to killing the young and consuming their flesh. At his trial, more than 50 people testified, and he was found guilty of lycanthropy, the ability to turn into an animal, and witchcraft. He and his wife were burned at the stake on January 8th of 1573. And that brings me to the end of our time, so if you guessed Little Sister from BioShock, enjoy my virtual heart for appreciating the video game. If you enjoyed my ramblings today, could you help us out by giving this video a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more fantastic content from the folks here at Bumblebee, and once again, happy Halloween, everybody!